Welcome to the Local Insider Podcast, a show about everyday people who make a big difference.
Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Make your dreams a reality at Blankenship Wealth Management. Our personalized strategies are tailored to your goals and aspirations. Trust in Blankenship Wealth Management for a brighter tomorrow. Blankenship Wealth Management, your path to financial success. Tonya Fletcher, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I have noticed lots of things going on in Paris, lots of great things. I would like to get into that, but first, I would like our audience to know a little bit about you. What's your story? Where do you come from?
So I grew up a little bit of everywhere. I probably have more of a unique story than some. I was born in Tennessee and moved to California, Alabama, New York, Las Vegas, Arkansas. And so my family moved around a lot. And I ended up in County Line. So that's kind of where I planted my seeds and, decided that this is where I wanted to call home. And so, from there, I lived in Charleston and Cecil, and then, ultimately ended up in Paris. And, I'm trying to think of what all you'd like to know in that section, but.
So where in Tennessee were you born?
Memphis.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I don't remember. I only lived there for a few short months.
And did you graduate high school from County Line?
Well, I actually ended up not graduating school. I got my GED and then I went to West Ark right after that. So I would have. That's where I kind of finished school. But yeah,
that's amazing. My number 2 and number 3 son. Well, my number 3 son is a senior at County Line this year.
Okay.
But County Line's a really good school.
Yeah, I love County Line. I love the people there.
Mm-hmm. Very good people. Really good at baseball and basketball.
Basketball was a core sport back then. I cheered. I wasn't ever good at basketball.
You mentioned you went to West Ark. Did you get a degree from there? No.
I did not. Didn't finish. I had a baby very young,
mm-hmm.
and so I ended up having to go into the workforce instead.
And what did you do in the workforce?
So, probably back then, I actually worked at Cloy's Gear, worked
mm-hmm.
in a factory. I worked in a factory in Fort Smith, drove a forklift, started out there, and decided I really enjoyed people and being in sales. And so I started working for a company that's actually here in Boonville, Russell Cellular. And
okay.
I did sales for them, and then I worked up to a management position, and I had about 5 stores. Boonville was one of those. Paris was another. But I enjoyed traveling, and from there, it kind of started my sales career and getting, just out and about and realizing how much I enjoyed being around people and talking about, whatever it was that was interest to them.
So, what about sales attracted you?
Probably getting to know people, finding out what their needs were. I felt like doing what was best for them was always the way to make things, right for them. For example, in the cell phone world, people always came in with problems with their bill.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you helped them with those problems and really fought for them to make that right, they ultimately would come back and buy that phone from you. It might not be that day. It might not even be that year, but eventually, that, paid off. And so I always try to do what was right for the person that was sitting in front of me.
Right. People buy from who they like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome. So how did you go from sales at Russell to what you're doing now? And if you could kind of, for the people that don't know who you are or may not know who you are, kind of explain what it is you do.
So I'm currently the executive director at the Paris Chamber of Commerce. I've been there just over 9 years.
In that capacity?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, just a little over 9 years. So there's not really a job description when it comes to chamber work. It's much different than being in a corporate environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a learning curve to do something like that. But I was like a lot of moms where I was the homeroom parent, and I was always going to coach cheer at the Boys and Girls Club or help with the basketball teams and all of that. And I just had a love for being around people in my community and being with my kids. And somebody reached out and said, hey, there's a position open at the chamber. You should apply. And I thought, gosh, I don't even understand what all the chamber does. But it was interesting to have the opportunity to kind of be in the core of your community and be able to help your community grow. And so I decided to interview, and for some reason they selected me, and it was a whirlwind first year, I would say. I probably worked 60, 70 hours every week just trying to figure out, the things that who to call about this or who to call about that, or who would like to help with this, or just rounding up, the people in your community that, ultimately wanted to make a difference and be involved. And so, yeah, it's a long answer for that question, but.
Oh no. So were you a bit, if you could describe the way you felt when you took that job, were you a bit intimidated and you put in those hours because you wanted to be the best at doing that you could be, or kind of describe the way you felt going from there to taking on that role?
I think, having been a volunteer in different capacities in the community, like, at the school or at the Boys and Girls Club, I realized that, people liked to do things that helped grow whatever it was, their children. And so, I had been a business owner, been a member of the chamber, and I'd paid dues, but I didn't really know exactly what all the chamber did. They threw a Christmas parade. I knew that.
Right.
And so I think that's a lot of people's perception is, oh, well, they just, they get to throw fun events and have a Christmas parade once a year. But it really is a lot larger than that. It's more, the economic development focus and trying to, find ways to help grow your community. But I would say that first year I focused primarily on just knowing who did what and when and how they did it and why it worked. And, the question always came up of why do we do this? And my board would say, well, that's just the way we've always done it. Mm-hmm. And so, you hear that, and I just don't really love that phrase, if you will. And so I thought, are we doing it that way because it works? It's a benefit to our members. Why are we doing it? And so my first, task was just figuring out what our member benefits were and how we were serving our members. And I quite honestly didn't understand that, and so we started focusing on those items first. And every year it gets better and better. I would say probably by the year 3, I felt pretty comfortable in my role and knowing who I could call on for what, and knowing what trainings to go to and what's available out there.
Right. That was my next question. Was anytime you take on a new role, no matter if it's something that you've created or like a role that you stepped in like that, there's a bit of what is called imposter syndrome. You're like, can I really do this? Am I really the person? Mm-hmm. Am I good enough? My question was, what was going to be, you answered it, was when did you feel comfortable? At what point did you feel like you were actually the right person for that and actually excelling at it? So that was year 3?
Yeah, I would say probably year 3. I got pretty comfortable. I was fortunate enough the very first year I was at the chamber, the Community Development Institute came to our chamber or not necessarily the chamber, but the community. And they did what they call a community of study. And so I got to be part of that. And then year 1, I got to go and be part of their year 1 program. And so I was able to network with a lot of other chamber members and kind of, just build those foundations of people who I could, call on when I had questions. So that's a big deal. Because of that, I think it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago, I started a regional chamber directors meeting. I find I use my hands a lot.
Oh, that's fine.
But we started a regional chambers director group. So about every other month, once a quarter, somewhere in there, we don't have an exact timeline. We meet with all the chamber directors in the region and just try to focus on, syncing our calendars so that, if Boonville's having a festival or event and Paris is having one, we don't do them on the same day so we can encourage our residents to travel and go to both of those. Same thing for Ozark and Charleston, Dardanelle, those places. And so we sit down and we kind of go over that stuff so that we can, encourage our community to travel to those in more of a regional approach. And so that helps. But I will say, and you may already, know this, there's a lot of change in the chamber world. And just when you get somebody in there and you get them trained, they leave. And so that makes it hard for communities if they don't have, somebody that kind of sticks around.
Or if they have somebody in there that just does everything like they've always done it because they've always done it, whether it be beneficial or not.
Yeah.
So when you said a regional, what all townships or cities are involved in that?
So currently, we actually just last week had our regional board retreat. And so, let me make sure I don't miss anybody. So we had Boonville, Paris, Charleston, Ozark, Alma, Van Buren, Clarksville, and Dardanelle were all chambers that participated in that regional training.
Yeah. The feedback I got back from our chamber was they said it was a really, really good event. They learned a lot.
Yeah. It's nice to have a facilitator that's been in the chamber world as long as Jim Fram. He organizes that. Myself and Julie Murray out of the Van Buren Chamber, we kind of, oversee getting everybody together. Julie leads, and I'm just really her helper when it comes to that. But we have a lot of fun too. So it's, sometimes those things can be stuffy. So my job, I get to make it fun. So
what are the significant changes that you have implemented, or let me rephrase that. What's different now in the chamber from when you started?
Ooh, so much. Everything.
Totally revamped, basically.
Well, I'll give you one example. When I went in for my interview, my first, well, maybe not first question, but one of my questions were, why do we have our festivals and events at our fairgrounds? Something that sounds so simple, but we used to have them in our town square. And if you drive by the town square, it was happening. You could see it. When you have it at the fairgrounds, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And a lot of people would say, I didn't even know that was going on, or, I didn't drive by. I didn't know it was happening. And so some of those small changes, is how it started of, can I try it? Will you let me try it? And they, I had a really great board that let me change a few things. And so we started doing that, and the festivals grew and the events grew. And then of course the financials grew because of that. More people were supportive of those events, which brought more money, and we can do more things when we have more money, of course.
So how involved are the chamber members in Paris? I know Boonville, we have lots of members, but we have so many that are just, they're absent from any of the meetings, or we have events, maybe they don't show up. How does Paris differ in that respect?
I don't even know if it's different, but we do a couple different things, and you're never going to get everybody to come, and you're going to have people that just want to be a member of your chamber to support your chamber, and then you're going to have members that want to be a member because they need the support from you. This really depends on, kind of where that person is. But we have a group of ambassadors, or one of the things that we've started since I've been at the chamber. And so those are a bunch of people who get together once a month. We have lunch and we network, and I share with the ambassadors the things that I share with my board on a smaller version. And I ask them for help. Hey, we're going to have this event, coffee and donuts, or a mixer of some sort. Please come and invite one person. I'll tell you a funny story. The very first ribbon cutting that I did at the chamber, there were 2 people in attendance, besides myself and a lady that volunteered at the chamber. And again, there's no training manual to be in a chamber world. It's just kind of like, this is what we've done before. And, you can either do that or do something different, and it's kind of up to you. And so I went and I thought, this cannot be the welcome that we show a new business in town. There's got to be more people that want to say, welcome to the community. And I think educating your members of, hey, we would love to have you come, because we just want people to come by, shake their hand, and tell them we're so excited to have them in town. And now we have ribbon cuttings with, 30 to 50 people in attendance. And it takes just that one-on-one conversation with people to say, we would love to have you come and be a part of the ribbon cutting, but more importantly, come and tell this business we're excited about having them. And I think when people realize it's just that simple, and they're not coming just for a photo opportunity, they're coming to help that person feel welcome, people are more apt to do it. So I think just making some small changes and involving people like your chamber ambassadors, or reaching out to those members and asking them to invite a friend, those kinds of things.
So what made you choose? Well, I guess the answer to that was they offered you the position. Obviously, you've been there for how many years did you say?
Just over 9.
Over 9. Why have you stayed there and not tried to go, with your experience? I'm sure you could go to, Fort Smith, anywhere, Fayetteville, Springdale, something like that. What is holding you to Paris? Why are your roots there?
I've had jobs where I've had to travel and be away from my family, and I missed ball games and I missed just the stuff that was important to me. And I decided that the family time and the work-life balance was more important than the money. And so ultimately that's why I've stayed. I have had offers to work in Paris, jobs that paid better. But it wasn't where my passion and my heart was. I really love helping people and I really love being involved in the community. And so for me, and the older you get, the more you realize that work-life balance and going to a job that you enjoy is far more important than a pay raise.
100%. How much of it is you see this thing that you've built and you really you would never want to just hand it off to somebody over financial gain? How much of it, that decision it's kind of like that, or am I way off?
So rephrase that.
So it was this way when you got there, and now it's obviously much better.
Yes.
And more successful.
Yes.
How much of it was like, I've built this, I can't just leave it to somebody that may not appreciate it or may run it in the ditch or whatever?
Yeah. My husband always says, why don't you look at something else? And I say, just kind of what I said, it's not even so much about, it is like a baby. I'll give you an example and kind of tie it back in. But so one of the programs that we never had in Paris was a Mainstreet program. And so I was able to start that program, apply, and it's a lengthy process, but very worthwhile. And I had to have my board agree to let me run and manage that program as a volunteer, for at least 3 years. And so I applied and I fought for it and I started the program and built the program. We built a board. We started a nonprofit organization, and then it was time. We grew up and I had to hand it off to somebody else. Because
it has to be separate from the chamber, right?
And it didn't have to be, but we were to a point where it had grown enough where it could stand alone. And so we were hiring a director. And of course, I sit in the interview process and, we got someone we were super excited about that did a fantastic job, but I remained on the board. And so then we had a transition, we had a change, we had a new director come in. And so you're nervous, you don't know this person, they come in and she has done a fantastic job. I no longer, as of, I think it was December, I'm on the board anymore. So that organization runs out of our chamber office, but I'm not on the board. So it's kind of like what you said. You've kind of got to build it. You've kind of got to make sure it can stand on its own 2 feet, just like a child growing up and getting out of the house. You have to know that you raised them right and that they're going to do the right things. And so that's kind of where we're at with the Mainstreet program. Is I think if it's meant to be and it's time to move on, then you find the right people and put them in the right place. And, ultimately be there if they have questions. The Mainstreet director now, we have a great relationship and we feed ideas off each other all the time, but it's not my baby anymore, but it was something I'm very passionate about and still probably one of their biggest fans, is our Mainstreet program.
So the Mainstream program, for those who don't know what that is, can you kind of give the Cliff Notes on that, a basic snapshot? What's the benefit of having a Mainstreet program in a town?
So when you start out in a small community, any town's 5,000 or below in population can be what's called a downtown network. So it's not actually a official Mainstreet program. But a downtown network has to have somebody that will manage, the reporting to the state. The state of Arkansas runs the program called Mainstreet Arkansas.
So it's state grants, not federal?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the money that Mainstreet Arkansas runs off of comes from the credits when you purchase homes. There's some taxes in there when people buy homes in Arkansas, and all that goes into to the funding for the Historic Preservation Society, which is ultimately, through Mainstreet Arkansas. And they give downtown networks a whopping $1,000 a year to work with. And so we were lucky enough to have our city partner with us and give us some extra funds. And so we could do downtown improvement grants, such as awnings or paint or windows, just some simple examples.
A city partner would be a donor of some sort?
In ours in particular, it was the city of Paris.
Oh, okay. So the city. The municipality. Okay.
They partnered with us to have a little bit more money in the pot so that we could show, our businesses the benefit. So in addition to that, if you're part of the program, they have interior designers, exterior designers. They'll come and do a facade improvement for you, and they'll show you this is what your building looks like now. And maybe you say, well, I'd really like a purple building with pink polka dots, and they'll show you what that would look like on paper so you can see it before you actually put the paint to it. And then they'll tell you what their suggestions are so that you can kind of see, gosh, that awning really would look good there. Or maybe that window dressing would look a little different like this. And so that really helps a lot of businesses in town. And all of those services are free to your downtown members if you're a Mainstreet business.
So are there separate dues that you would have to pay to be a part of that program?
A lot of communities do. In Paris in particular, we do not have due structure right now.
That's amazing. So it's all benefit for the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were able the first year to, purchase benches and tables and banners and the flowers that you see around our downtown. Most of those are purchased through Mainstreet, but the city of Paris also does some of those, and the city waters all of those things. So it really is a partnership with the city to make that program work.
What are the biggest challenges that you face as a director?
Probably having a big pot of money. That's one of the biggest things. And then, a lot like Boonville, where we're located is a challenge for us. We don't have an interstate, and we don't have a waterway, and we don't have rail. All of those things are what attract the larger businesses and really, spur on economic development. And we just don't have those advantages. And so, we have to grow with the smaller businesses. We have to look for those opportunities, that present themselves to us. I feel like Boonville has done a really good job in some of those areas, and obviously I feel like Paris has too. But
I don't want to go down too deep of a rabbit hole here because it could be controversial to some people in Boonville in particularly. What are some of the advantages that Paris has being able to serve alcohol? I mean, we do now. We have alcohol licensing and stuff like that, but obviously Paris has been that way, I guess, forever since the end of Prohibition. So what are some of the advantages of having that?
I don't know if that's really a focal point so much. I hate to say it like this, but it's always been that way. So you just don't even know that it's different, that we have, alcohol sales in Paris. I think perception probably from people are if you have a community and you have alcohol sales in a convenience store, in a restaurant, that's inviting trouble. But I don't know that one side of the county has more trouble than the other.
Right.
And so I don't really know that it's a huge thing for us. It's just there, and people take advantage of it, I guess.
That was kind of always my argument when people would say, well, there would be drunks all over the street, and there would be as they would say, there'd be a beer joint on every corner. I'm like, well, Paris is doing a pretty good job. I don't see beer joints on every corner there. I don't see drunks walking down the sidewalk or anything like that. I think it's those mindsets like we were talking about. That's the way we've always done it. So people don't like change. So what role does social media play in the chamber now?
Boy, that's changed in the last 9 years for sure. I guess when we first started, our chamber Facebook page had about 300 people that followed it. And so that was a really great opportunity for me to expand the, information out to our community. And so currently, we have about 7,500 people that follow our chamber Facebook page.
Wow.
So it really has changed. I remember getting to 500, and that was such a milestone. And, we're so proud to be able to reach folks all over, through our social media. I do worry sometimes that there are people that we miss that don't, get on Facebook, especially our older generation. But social media definitely plays a huge role in what we do. We used to not have a newsletter, for example. And so now we have a newsletter that goes out weekly to kind of keep people up to speed on, community events, things that are going on. We let our members, post events, flyers, things like that in there, and try to pull from everyone else's social media, because we don't know what we don't know. We tell people that if you have something that's a big deal, let us know. Otherwise we may not see it. So really trying to capture all that information and put it in a newsletter, send an email out to folks, or, on social media. But we recently started a TikTok. And so we haven't done that before. We have somebody local that really focuses on that, and she's in the process of building it and then doing some training sessions with us on building content. And so it's always evolving. We're always learning something new, and we're always finding ways to reach new people.
So Paris has a TikTok influencer that lives there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, her name is Danielle Barham, and she is fantastic. And again, she comes in about once a month and has a little training session with us about, just something simple like how you film this. And if you start from down here and you kind of roll that camera up, you get a different angle and film, and you can always edit. And so we're in the editing sessions right now. And so I've been playing around with that and learning. And they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I am learning some. So.
So how many followers does she have?
That's a good question. I don't know her followers. She is actually building a brand new page for us, and it doesn't have anything to do with the chamber. It just is about visiting Paris. And so she's finding points of interest and things around the community. So again, it's fairly new. It's not huge yet, but I anticipate it'll grow just like her Facebook did.
As you know, the industry in the U.S. is kind of at a lull, to say it gently. How significant is the online marketplace or online economy to building Logan County?
You mean like how are they taking advantage of it?
Right. Do you see a shift from an industrial economy to maybe an online economy, or I guess do you have people moving into Paris that maybe they work from home? And also, obviously you have the Mount Magazine there, Cove Lake and all that. How many visitors do you get, that come in that is, I guess, a tourist economy? So, if I can rephrase this, how would I say it? Have you noticed a progression of the industrial economy? Obviously you still have Chloe's there, right? But we've all lost some industry. I know some have left. I think the Subiaco closed, right?
No, it's called AAM now.
Okay. So maybe you haven't lost the industry that we have. But have you seen a shift in the economy of Paris from maybe there you have more of a tourist or online economy versus what it used to be when it was an industrial only economy?
Yeah, back in the 90s, they, were really trying hard to recruit some large industries. And, I don't know how it is on this side of the county, but we don't have enough housing. If a manufacturer said, we want to show up in your industrial park and we want to provide 500 jobs, we wouldn't have places for them to live. We have rental listings that we give out, and there's not one available more than a few hours before it's rented.
Are you serious?
I'm not exaggerating. It's really a problem that we have. And so sometimes people's perception is, oh, well, why don't we get this giant factory that's going to come in? But there's a lot of factors that play into that. Quality of life, obviously, is one of the biggest ones right now. But tourism industry is definitely a focus that we have, beautifying the downtown and giving them places to shop at, things to do, places to eat, is very important. Mount Magazine has over 400,000 visitors a month. And I would say probably 60 to 70% of those people pass through Paris to get there. And so that was one of our driving forces behind having a Mainstreet program, is so that we had, a really great downtown that people could come and spend an afternoon and go to our museums and find things to do. We partner with the lodge a lot to talk about, what groups are coming up there. If there's, an RV group coming, or if there's a family reunion, we always make sure in every room that they have that there's a little pamphlet that says these are the things to do in Paris. And we change those out once a year, so it stays pretty current, but we don't have to, repeat them as often as you would think. But that helps us, drive some traffic down the mountain. I would definitely say that people are online shopping, more, even in our own community, but less take advantage of that opportunity than I would hope that they would. But I'm seeing it more and more. We have boutiques that will ship out.
Sterling is there. They moved over.
Yeah. Sterling is a big one, and they were already doing that, and they ship out so many packages every day worldwide. And they're a great example of, how you can be in a small town and capitalize on the local, retail traffic coming in the door, but also how you can, ship all over the U.S. and in the world, so.
Yeah, they're kind of the example that I use when I have. Obviously, it's kind of a hard thing for me to put into a perspective with some people, especially if they're not familiar with like the older generation that maybe they don't even have a smartphone, they have a flip phone, and they can't wrap their mind around. So they have a store, but they don't really sell much out of the store. So, but anyway, what would you say your chamber's core values are?
So would be, focusing on the members and focusing on the community, making sure that we're, doing things that are best for our community as a whole. And when I say community, I don't just mean Paris. I mean, I focus on a regional approach in everything we do. I don't ever want to think about, if it's just good for Paris. Because if Boonville's doing something and it's going really well, or you get a big business, likely those folks are going to come over to Paris and shop, and vice versa with all of our surrounding communities. So, helping our members, capitalize on, our region and not just the city limits, of our town, is important. But, I guess the main core value is just, putting our members first and finding out what their needs are. And that changes every day.
So do you have any tips for dealing with problems? I'm sure you have. What would be the most common problem that you have in the chamber?
A typical day at the chamber is never typical. You might get a phone call, and I'll tell you my saying that I say all the time is, next week it's going to slow down and I'll have time to really catch up on that. Next week hasn't come yet. So I try to not say that as much anymore, but the focus every day is different. I might think I'm going to go in and do one thing. And then my day completely gets changed because something happens and somebody needs help in a different capacity. So I would say just being flexible is probably, a big challenge, but I thrive off of that, honestly. I enjoy multitasking, and I really, I love that on one day I might have 10 different things come across my desk, from, getting a new member to doing a ribbon cutting to dealing with a new solar eclipse problem, or, helping somebody, find a phone number. It's really different every day. And so I think I wouldn't really say there's a lot of problems. I focus heavily on finding solutions and not giving problems to, my board.
Right. So what do you do when you're not working? What do you do for fun? Hobbies?
I love spending time with my family. My husband and I have recently, had lots of time where, the kids are growing up and we have more time for ourselves. And so we get to do fun things. We recently took a train ride, in Branson, and that was the coolest thing. If you haven't been there, you should go, but we enjoy that. We enjoy going to Cove Lake and laying out and just, hanging out. And then I love watching, any kind of sports the kids have. My youngest daughter plays basketball and golf, and she's always trying something new, and I have grandchildren and they play, all kinds of sports, volleyball and baseball. And so we just really enjoy going and hanging out with them. When I leave here, go have dinner with the kids. So just being with my family.
What does your routine look like? Do you have an exercise routine, or do you, what does the typical day look like to you?
Oh gosh, that's a good question, because there's really not any typical days. As I said, you juggle lots of things, but I get up, and as I'm waking up, depends on how early I get up. I'll check my email usually as soon as I wake up, and make sure there's nothing I have to respond to. That's and it's I probably shouldn't say this, but I probably work a lot more than I'd like to admit.
And, if the first thing you do when you wake up is you check your email, you're at work right when you wake up.
Yeah. And I don't mind. I feel like I have a pretty good work-life balance. If it's time for dinner, we put away the phone, we focus on each other. We don't, pick up our phones and we do that. But then if we're just sitting on the couch and, watching a movie that's, not a priority to me, I'll check my email or respond to things, and I don't mind doing that. And I feel like I stay more caught up that way.
So how important is that, to have time to where everybody's devices are off and you're all having a meal or whatever that may be, Bible study or whatever? How important is that?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think it's something a lot of families don't do a lot of. And, we're guilty of that ourselves. So, I'm not saying that we're, perfect, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, having that time away from your phone and, just driving down the road and having a conversation about, what you did that day, those kinds of things are, invaluable to me.
Who's been your biggest inspiration? If it were, is it a teacher or someone in your professional career?
I've had a lot. I've been very blessed. I've had a lot of people that, kind of influenced me, from managers, bosses, people that believed enough in me to promote me, things like that. But I would say my biggest influence would be my grandparents. They pretty much raised me,
Mm-hmm.
and, just they're not with us anymore. And so I miss them. I'll probably get teary-eyed thinking about them, but my grandma, believed in, Bible study every day. My grandpa believed in talking to every stranger he met. And so I think their values, their core values, kind of bled over to me. And I love people, and I love talking to people and meeting new folks. And, and of course I love going to church, and I love, the Bible. And so that's,
Mm-hmm.
I think the things that they instilled in me are, the core of who I am.
What is going on with, I hear that there's an eclipse coming in a couple years, or is it next year? It's
Mm-hmm.
next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with that?
April 8th, 2024, we're going to have an eclipse. And so you kind of have two groups of people. You have a group of people that are saying, oh, wow, how can I capitalize on that? And what's this going to mean for me, my business, my nonprofit organization? And then you have this other set of people that look at you like, I think you might be crazy, and that's not going to happen, and it's not really coming. And so I think the eye opener for me was on April 7th of this year. I looked online, and all the local Airbnbs, hotels, all had openings. And the morning of April 8th, all of those places went live, meaning the Mount Magazine Lodge, the 50 plus Airbnbs that I could see, the hotels, all of them sold out within about an hour. And so every room at the lodge, the campsites, the Airbnbs that are already available were gone. And then shortly after, I started getting emails from people saying, I'm from Michigan, and I'm going to come to this eclipse, and I'm going to be in Logan County, and I have these questions. Or what merchandise do you have available? I live in Nebraska. And so those kinds of emails and that number of people that reserved places were really eye-opening for me. And we had already been talking about it for probably, 7 or 8 months at that point. And then once that year mark hit, it was like, okay, it's time to get serious about this. And so, gosh, we've been so much information coming at us. The state of Arkansas has an eclipse, I don't know what her title is, director, and she has come to Paris a few times and really, entertained us, but really just give us some, great pointers and things like that. Being educated on something simple like making sure you have fuel in your car, because likely our gas stations will run out. They anticipate Logan County's population will double. So, we're looking at 22,000 people twice in our county. So the grocery stores, the gas stations.
Twice
the population.
Oh, I thought you meant like more than one occurrence.
Oh, yeah. No, twice the population. And so a lot of them will come in on that Friday before, and they want things to do. So they'll be here Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Are they looking at Logan County as a whole? Like the population right now is like around 20,000 something. So they think there's going to be 40,000 people here?
Yes.
So 40,000 new people, or a total?
Total.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that again, it's an estimate. And the way they get those numbers are, when the eclipse happened in, August of 2017,
Mm-hmm.
they started reaching out to those communities and said what happened. And as you can imagine, they weren't prepared. And so we are lucky enough that we get to take from their lessons, the traffic and the fuel and just the little things. People were sleeping in their cars on the interstate. They were 10 hours, on a trip that should have taken 45 minutes. And we hear those stories over and over of how it was just gridlocked in their communities.
And that was a partial eclipse.
That was a full.
It was?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was only partial here.
For us, correct.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And so like just a really easy example, Fort Smith isn't getting a full eclipse, but Paris and Boonville are. So those folks might want to drive on in for the day and experience that total eclipse and then drive back home. So the traffic, we anticipate will be quite a bit. Now the folks that are coming from Louisiana, they're not going to make it to Logan County. They're going to, be in the south part of the eclipse.
So it'll be mainly people coming from the north.
Yeah. I think on the day of, we expect the people from the north. Again, I tell people this all the time. I just make it up as I go because I've never done it and I don't know, but I'd rather be prepared than not. But we're trying to encourage our nonprofits, your Rotary and your Kiwanis, to have a chili cook-off or a pancake breakfast or a whatever that, will get people to, come and buy your food or your, souvenirs or whatever that may be.
So did the state give any guidance on whether, the school system should be open or closed, or did they give?
Because it doesn't affect the entire state. The school board or the Department of Ed has left that up to each individual schools to decide. I know that the Paris school districts, the Subiaco Academy, and our St. Joseph schools have all decided to close school that day. Transportation being the primary issue there, it ends about 3:00 in the afternoon. So they're worried they can't get children home. And so that's the biggest concern. We could have a whole podcast on eclipse stuff.
Yeah. I've got lots of questions, but we only have a certain amount of time. Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about the leadership program that I know Stacy Holbert is a member of that, and I've seen some posts on the I guess it's the Paris Chambers page about it. What is that?
So back in 2019, I was really challenged to figure out how we can start a leadership program. Logan County was the only county in our region that didn't have a program. So I was able to attend Russellville's leadership program and just go through and just role model our program off of there. So they were kind enough to let me go, knowing I was coming to steal all their great ideas. But that's what you do in the chamber world is you share all those ideas so you don't have to recreate the wheel. But, and so I use their platform, their kind of their agenda, if you will. And then it kind of gets tweaked a little bit every year. So we just finished year 3. Our 3rd class was completed. And the first year we had 7. Second year we had 10 people, and last year we had 13 people complete the program. And my goal is to help people become better leaders in Logan County. You think I probably know everything because I have all these great interviews and these people that come in and you hear these stories. But until you get to see it for yourself, you take a tour of the jail and you go inside the jail and you see every area of what the old jail looked like to what the new jail looks like. And it's really eye-opening, just something simple like that. But we have a day that we go to the state capitol and they get to see, how they work in session there, tour. They get to, it's different things every year. Like I said, it's just a little bit different, but it really focuses on, city government. There was a day that we took them and they toured the sewer plant. That sounds really terrible, but most of them left and said, I had no idea how this works. You take for granted that you use these services, but you don't really know how they work. So it gives you kind of a backdoor exposure to things in Logan County, economic development, tourism, and the other things that I mentioned. And it helps those folks, just be better educated leaders and hopefully, share that information and maybe run for an office one day. Maybe they decide, hey, I really think I want to be involved in that quorum court thing. And, they get exposed to some of those things. And then they complete a project. And so they're responsible to fundraise and pick a project and complete the project before graduation. Last year's class, if I was guessing, I don't have an exact total, they probably had about $8,000 that they raised for the senior center in Paris and provided lots of great things for them, new paint and new ceiling fans and a new organized pantry that was in very desperate need, a new microwave, mini blinds that'll make it more energy efficient in there. And then they were able to, the leftover funding was just over $2,000, and they were able to present that to them so they could put that in their budget to help feed folks at the senior center.
That's very nice. So is that, do you have guest speakers come in, or do you, is each meeting like a different topic or?
Yeah, we have a few. Mostly it's hands-on stuff where they get to tour. We go to Rockline here in Boonville, and they're able to go inside the plant and see that and hear from the leaders at Rockline. And so those are just, every day, every session is a little different. We'll have a health and history day where we'll take a history walk and learn about some things, about Logan County. And so it's always interesting. And we always have different people that kind of present, in their area of expertise.
So what absolutely excites you right now?
Oh, so much. If you're talking about work or talking about personal, it's two different things. But I think, as far as like in the chamber world and in Logan County in particular, I feel like we're all moving in a direction together, and that's really exciting. I feel like we're bridging some gaps that have been there before and working together. I know the chamber here in Boonville reaches out to me often, and we love having them over at our office to, help them, with whatever, is on their plate that week. And again, they don't call weekly or anything, but when they have a challenge, we love helping them. We recently had the Alma Chamber come, and we helped them kind of navigate through the Mainstreet program. And so, I get to speak at Charleston next month to talk about the eclipse. And I think that is really exciting to me, that all of us work together regionally and we all come together and share our ideas, and we're building a stronger community because of it.
When you, accomplish things, let's say you set out to do something, are you a goal-oriented type person? Do you set a goal, like, let's say 6 months goal, 1 year, 5 year goals? Or are you the type that just goes in and does the right thing every day, and you may have some, things that you want to get done, but I guess, are you goal-oriented is my question.
I'm very motivated by success, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And not personally, I'm motivated by the success of an event or the program, or, whatever it is in front of me. So, I find motivation in helping other people. I know that sounds silly, but it really is. I feel like, God gives you a servant's heart, and you've got to use it for that.
Yeah, it doesn't sound silly at all.
Yeah. And so I think, I'm motivated by the successes that I see around me and the people. When someone says, "Oh my gosh, you made me get up there and public speak, and that was so uncomfortable, but now I really enjoy it." That, to me, I beam with pride that I'm so excited that they now, are better in their role because, I kind of, push them to do a little bit, and so that's a win for me.
So your gauge of success is the success of other people that you direct, I guess.
Yeah. Say yes.
What would be your advice to, you mentioned that maybe there was once, or maybe there still is a bit, kind of a divide between the North and South with Boonville and Paris. Obviously there's a football rivalry, or used to be, I don't know, but aside from that, what are some ways that we can kind of work together, maybe, bridge this gap and see each other as a county? Because when we first started out, that's exactly the way it was. This is one of the rare counties, I think, in the U.S. that has 2 county seats. So, what are some ways that we could do that, in your opinion?
Well, that was one of the goals of the leadership program, and having more people from both sides of the county be in the same group and network together. Those folks, like you mentioned, Stacy was in the class, and she met a lot of folks from Paris that she now calls and talks to, and they can call and talk to her. And so I think it's an exchange of stuff like that, that really helps. We've had a few people from the Boonville area be in the class, and that's one of the struggles that I have. And with the current program is I really have a hard time finding people in Boonville that want to be in the leadership program. It's always dominant to the Paris side. And obviously people know me and I talk about it all the time, but I was able to come over here and attend one of your coffee and donut mixers, and I got to talk about it there. I went around town and passed out applications to lots of people, emailed application to lots of people, asked people, like Stacy that were in the class to share the information with people. And so if, that would be something you could maybe help me with, is just, educating people that we want people on both sides of the county, magazine, wherever it is, we want them to be in the program so that they learned that we're all kind of on the same team. I don't know if you know April Mayo, but
Mm-hmm.
she lives over here and she works in Paris, and she was in last year's class, and she was a really great example of somebody who could share her feedback from both sides of the county and figure out how we can, make everybody work together. So just having more people exposed to each other, I think, is the key to it.
I don't know a lot about Scranton. How involved is there? Do they have a chamber? I'm assuming they do.
They don't.
They don't. So how involved are the people in Scranton with the Paris chamber?
It's a lot like Boonville and Magazine.
Okay.
I mean, we kind of network together. Kind of the same thing. Their folks are members of our chamber. We work closely with the Abbey, the Logan County Bank. Those kinds of places are members of our chamber, and we, promote them at any time they need us to.
Okay. So what role does discipline play in your routine?
That's a good question. I think, in your 20s, you think that you're disciplined in certain ways, but I think, I can't relax or, enjoy myself if I don't check off those tasks. And so for me, that's my discipline. Is I have a list every day and I check them off. And if something can wait till tomorrow, I'm okay. But there's a few things that maybe I just need to finish today. And if that means I need to stay another hour and get it done so that I can fully focus on my family when I get home, whatever that looks like, that's my discipline, is just checking off my list. And it's very rewarding when there's something on there and I can check it off. And sometimes I even get them all checked off in a day, and that's exciting too.
That's I haven't had that happen yet, but I hear it's really nice. I know my wife is crucial to what I do. I wouldn't get anything done. I'm a member of the procrastinators club, so our motto is we're going to take over the world when we get around to it. So she really motivates me. She's the organizational side of what I do. How important is your relationship with your husband and what you do, even though he's not there with you? How important is that?
Yeah, he's so supportive. He's very encouraging too. Maybe sometimes when I think, I'm doubting myself or not sure that I, have what it takes, he reminds me, that I do, or, he constantly builds me up. And so my husband's a truck driver, so he drives all across the United States. So he's gone a lot, but when he's home, we try to make the best of our time. But, I had a coffee and donuts mixer on Thursday, and he, comes and goes to those things so that he can be there and say hi. And he's my biggest cheerleader. And obviously that's very important.
That's awesome. How do you handle negative reviews or negative, on social media? It would be a review, but how do you handle negativity in your personal and in your work life?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Cause we all deal with it. And, I would say I really try to figure out what their perspective on whatever it is. You'll have somebody that'll say something. Again, you have a lot of people that are keyboard warriors and they don't mind to say something, behind the keyboard. I typically invite those folks to come in and visit with me and let's talk about it. I rarely get anybody that takes me up on that, but I think that it's important to listen to their perspective, because obviously, there's something going on that they don't understand, and maybe you could help them understand it better. And then there are things that, maybe, I've messed up and I need to, figure it out. When we have vendors come to a festival, for example, I'll email them and I'll say, give me this feedback, and I want to know, what did they like? Did they like where they were at? And I'll get feedback, and it'll be something I haven't thought about, and I appreciate that, and it makes that event or whatever it is better, because maybe I could do things differently. So just trying to grow from that. I think negativity grows you. You could have 100 people say great things about you and one person say something not so great, and you're just going to focus on that not so great thing. I think that's human nature. And so sometimes you have to remind yourself, you can't please everyone, but I'll sure try. Right.
Stay curious. What do you see for the future of Paris and Logan County?
I kind of said that a little bit ago, is I feel like we're really fortunate that we all are moving and working in the same direction. I have a great relationship with our mayor. I also sit on the city council. I don't know if I mentioned that, but having a seat at the table at the city council and, having the leadership program and things like that, we're always in the same rooms together, and we're always able to communicate, the needs that we have in our community. And that's very, very important. And I think that's why I kind of go back to getting those people in the same room together, networking, making friends, learning about each other's family, and having that as the people you lean on. We've just got to get those folks in the same room so that we can all be moving in the same direction. I think that's probably the most important thing.
So do you have any long-term goals? I guess, what is your long-term plan? Do you plan to stay where you're at till you retire, or do you have some point that you have another goal, like you want to go you have political aspirations, or what are your long-term goals?
That might change every day, depending on when you ask me. But I love what I do. I love the chamber, and I have goals that I want to meet. The next thing I want to do, we've had, lots of growth. The next thing I'd like to do is I'd start a youth leadership program. And that's kind of in my year 5 of the program's plan of, how do we get the youth together and give them a snippet of the good things in our community? Because the problem we face is they live here and then they just can't wait to leave. And I want to give them some nuggets and values that they want to come back to. So having a leadership program is like my next goal for the youth. And then I think, 5 years from now, who knows? I've considered running for office in some capacity, but that's just kind of a thought in my mind. But I don't know.
On a state level?
Yeah, considered it.
So what would that look like?
Meaning, like, would I leave the chamber?
Yeah, like what would have to happen for you to say, okay, I'm going to do that? Do you see a void there? Do you want to make change there at the state level? Is that kind of?
I didn't grow up in a home that talked about politics.
Mm-hmm.
So politics were never really a focus for me. And then having been in the chamber world, it's very politically driven. Mm-hmm. Just having a seat at the city council table changes a lot of things for, the chamber, so that we have a voice at the table, and a voice for everybody, not just one person. And I feel like that's what I'm able to bring to the table is, the voice of the businesses. And so I think, thinking about politics, I think, gosh, how great would it be to have a seat at the table and have a voice for my community? And so that's kind of what drives me, is just, having the voice that, can grow.
So to be a representative of where you are, to make sure that they get the most that they can for the people that you care about, not so much you want to go change the state as a whole.
I'm sure that, stuff like that would come up as it goes, but I find it really interesting to listen to session. I love our state day that we go and spend, at the Capitol. And I'm always interested in the things that are, topics of discussion. And it's fascinating to me how it all works. And again, I didn't grow up around that, so I'm very green when it comes to all of that. But I just know that there's so much to learn. I don't think anybody can be an expert on all of it, and that helps to grow your circle of people that maybe this comes up and you need to talk to somebody in the media to find out, or maybe this educator has a better thought process on that. And so I think having that network of folks and leaning on them, and then figuring out how to make it better for the people here.
I think, I study I study successful people. That's my biggest hobby, is I study successful people. And I don't, there's nothing original that I do. If I see further, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. Isaac Newton. So one of the qualities of an effective leader is exactly what you said. It's not knowing all the answers. It's knowing how to get the answers, who to ask. So if you hear somebody that says, I want to be in politics because I know everything, that's the person you need to be afraid of.
Right. But, and to answer your question, I don't see myself at the chamber if I do decide to run for an office, primarily because I feel like, if you're representing a district, you shouldn't just focus on one community over another, and I would want to focus on the entire district.
Right. What is your everyday carry? What's something that you carry with you every day that you just couldn't live without besides your phone?
Yeah. I was going to say it's shameful. You mentioned that before we sat down, and I thought, I don't know, my phone. And, I think, my everyday carry, unfortunately, is probably my phone, but my computer and having access to, the community and my network of things that I have going on.
Your tribe.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know, just, I don't really have an everyday carry. That's a terrible answer.
No. Obviously, people if they have a business in Boonville, they can be a member of either chamber. So Paris businesses can be members of Boonville Chamber and vice versa. Mm-hmm. How awesome would it be if we had events, and when we had events, both sides showed up to each?
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. And when y'all have, is your October days,
mm-hmm.
We put those flyers in our newsletter so that we make sure people know about it. We encourage them to come over. We encourage folks to have a booth over here, if they have products they want to display. And so I think there is a lot of that where they'll kind of flip flop. But as far as sponsor goes, I don't know that there's a lot of businesses that go for both sides, and they very well should, because,
mm-hmm.
It's a benefit to get out in front of that audience, because it's a lot easier to drive over here. We drive over here quite often and eat,
mm-hmm.
at the Boonville restaurants, because it's just something different, and it's just about a 20-minute drive for us. And so the same thing for Paris. There's lots of great places that, people could just drive over in 20 minutes and enjoy the day and, capitalize on that.
So what's this? I think it's called Preston Rose Farms. Have you eaten there?
I have eaten there when they had an event outside of there, but I've been there several times. It's super cool. We actually have 3 breweries in Logan County. So we have Preston Rose, and they have amazing food. I've never heard anybody say anything other than their food is phenomenal. So try it.
It's all farm to table, locally grown, right?
Yes. They hosted a thing. They were raising money for, what was it for? A refrigerator for maybe our community outreach. So they did a farm to table dinner that I was able to attend, and foods I had never even heard of, and they were amazing. So, definitely try theirs. And then, of course, the Country Monks Brewing, which is at the Abbey,
mm-hmm.
and they are only open on Saturdays, but they don't have food or anything. But it's just a really kind of cool thing to know that in Logan County we have monks that are brewing beer, and that's nowhere else in Arkansas. So That's pretty cool.
So the people who started the very first brewery are brewing beer in Logan County.
Yeah, it's really a cool story. And then Pridgeon Family Breweries, which is in Scranton. And they have a really cool venue that a lot of people get married at. And it's a family-run business as well, just like Preston Rose.
And that's in Scranton?
That's in Scranton. Mm-hmm. And they have like food trucks that will pop in, and you can. It's interesting to me. They'll have a food truck there that night, and their community in Scranton will come just to grab food and take it home and eat it. They might not even come to the brewery. They just love having that opportunity to have the food trucks in town.
Right.
And so they take advantage of that. So they do really well. But yeah, so we have a really cool brew trail, and a lot of people, believe it or not, it's a really great tourist attraction.
So are they all of them open every Saturday?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to a young person that is just graduating high school? Now, you mentioned that one of the things you do is you try to give them some information of how it would be beneficial to stay here. I have one story. I'm in Rotary here in Boonville, and we give out scholarships, and we have a lot of Rotary members that had children graduating from high school this year. And I think every one of them had plans to come back here. They were going to go to school, but they had plans to come back here. And I think that was the majority of the students that had college, had plans to go to college, was that they were going to come back here to start their business. So, and that's totally in contrast to the way it's always been since I was in high school here. So, aside from that, what advice would you give a young person that is just graduating high school? Maybe they didn't want to go to college. Maybe they wanted to do something else. What would you say to them?
I get to participate in this program called Ready, Set, Graduate.
Mm-hmm.
And each year we go in and we get to interview these students. They give us their resumes and we get to have some one-on-one and we get to, critique how they did in that interview process. And, right before that, they do a little program called Mall of Life where they kind of go around and they say, well, I want to live in this house and I want to drive this car. And it really gives them a perspective of this is the job that you chose and this is what you make and this is how you budget for that. And most of them, it's a very eye-opening experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think when they look at that budget and they look at the prices, somewhere as simple as, like Fort Smith or Fayetteville, the price and cost to live is so much greater than it is here. Some of the things we're going to have to fix to keep them here, or, we're going to have to get this broadband thing worked out. But we're working on it. We got a committee formed and, so that's exciting. But, having access to broadband is going to be really important to retain those kids. But I think going through that interview process and just having some one-on-one conversations, finding out about their goals and dreams and helping them navigate, maybe a, small business and technology center to work out a business plan
Mm-hmm.
and help them, figure out to make that dream a reality. So, kind of partnering with some of those folks. But yeah, I think a lot more kids are seeing the value of living at home and we have some that don't. And I think even if they live in Fort Smith, they're still in our region. They're still,
Mm-hmm.
close by. I don't think that's, so far removed, but a gentleman spoke just this week and he said, I couldn't wait growing up. I just wanted to leave. And he said, and now that I'm back, I just can't wait to give back to my community. And I think that's what happens a lot of times is people, they do leave. But a lot of times those roots that you planted when they were in high school and the things that, they were involved in or the leadership program that they're involved in brings them back,
Mm-hmm.
brings them back to come back. So I think, just really to sum that up, to spend some one-on-one time with them, to help them have some buy-in, in the community and, just make them fall in love with it.
Very good. Well, I've told you well over an hour now, so
It went by fast.
how would people get in touch with you if they say if they had some questions, career questions, leadership questions, or maybe they wanted to join the Paris Chamber? How would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can call 479-963-2244 or our website is parisarkansas.com, or they can reach out on Facebook, Paris Arkansas Chamber, and be available pretty much anytime somebody needs me.
Tonya, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.